Today, we're going to discuss a book that highlights the Chinese government's plan to take over the US. They are in our media, our education system, our political system, and our economy. What you're about to hear may shock and surprise you, and some of what you hear you already know or probably have seen. The name of the book is The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. The book is in the top 1% on Amazon in its category with five-star reviews. Its author, T. Casey Fleming, has advised the White House, Congress, the Pentagon, the Department of Justice, and the FBI. He joins me now. Casey, in your first chapter, you describe a series of events that have occurred from Hollywood censorship, data breaches, supply chain vulnerabilities, the spread of critical race theory, the COVID cover-up, the fentanyl war, espionage, academic takeover, to provoke identity divisions, to institutional subversions, the chaotic events that we've seen. They all seem random or unrelated, but they're all purposeful. Explain how these are all related.
Well, when you look at each one of these events on their own, and you look at how they pop up in the news cycle, they seem like isolated events. Yeah, they don't look good. Yeah, they don't feel good, but we're on to the next news event, right? But nobody connects the dots. Nobody has connected the dots. And that's the reason I decided to take the time and the effort to go and write the book. I'm not a book guy, never wanted to write a book, still don't want to write a book, but it's out there. But when you connect the dots, the picture becomes extremely clear as to what's going on. The chaos is all by design. The manipulation of the left and the right and the center is all by design. We're all being manipulated and played equally together. We share much more together as Americans than we do with our enemy. And our enemy is just that. They've declared that we're their enemy for many, many decades. They train their children to kill Americans, and that's the Chinese Communist Party. Now, listen, there's only one China, and it is completely controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, period. And we as Americans don't understand. When we grew up under freedom and the American flag, we can't even comprehend what it's like to being raised under a communist regime, which is very dark, very diabolical, which is a level above evil when you think about what they've done and so on. So that's the background. I connect the dots. I give you the framework to where you understand what has been happening, but more importantly, what's going to happen in the future, tomorrow, next week, next month. You're going to be able to take that puzzle piece and plug it right in to what you know. I pull the curtain back, and I've done that for you, the listener, the viewer.
You're watching the Financial Sense News Hour, financial news for high net worth investors and strategists. When it comes to the biggest investment trends and understanding the market, we've been delivering the insights you need for over 30 years.
You describe this as World War III, unlike any war we've seen or read about. Why is this day one, as you describe, for the American citizen?
Because this is what World War III is. You're a soldier in World War III. The Chinese Communist Party redefined war about 30 years ago, and actually 27 years ago. When they looked at how we attacked Iraq with the shock and awe, they said, we can't compete with that. And we're certainly not going to go nuclear because that means we're gone too. So what can we do? So they redefined what war was. And that means the people's war and attacking the people, not the military. So if the Chinese Communist Party is successful, and they have been wildly successful to date against every man, woman, and child, not just in the US, but around the world, all free nations around the world, and including their own people who want to be free in China. So they've been wildly successful, but their plan is never to go to military, which means that they still follow Sun Tzu and they say, hey, win the war without fighting. And that's what they're doing. I mean, I go through each one of these types of war that's on every man, woman, and child, and it's extremely significant. And we're actually running out of time. If you're a football fan, we're 2 minutes left in the game. We're down by 2 touchdowns. and there are no more timeouts left, and we've got to throw some Hail Mary passes. But here's the kicker. Your government is not here to help you. They and their failed policies put you in this position. 75% of your medications come from China. 100% of your antibiotics come from China. Basically, our entire supply chain comes from China. Our critical minerals, our rare earth minerals, you name it, lithium. They've cornered the market on those things, and we've allowed that to happen. So your government puts you in this situation, and they're not going to save your bacon. That's the reason I wrote the book. I didn't write the book for me. It's not a vanity piece. The book is written for God and country.
It's amazing because we're involved in this Iran war right now, and we don't realize, as powerful as the U.S. military looks, we're dependent on China for our key materials to make the F-35 submarines. And they put a sort of a restriction on the magnets and the things that we need to make these weapons. So our military is dependent on China.
Exactly. I mean, you name it. We've spent the last 30 plus years doing everything we could to try to get China to become democratic and free. And they've played the game. They've played us extremely well. Everything that they've ever committed to, they have never honored. And our government could not do enough. And the problem is now they call them captured elites. There are people that have been in our government for years and are still in our government and our military and our Wall Street and businesses. They're called captured elites by the Chinese Communist Party. And they take money, whether directly or in their re-election PACs and so on. It's called foreign influence, and it should never be allowed in the United States. When you hear someone is lobbying, that means they're taking your rights away. Anything to do with foreign influence, they're lobbying your rights away. No foreign influence is allowed in China. Why in the heck do we allow it here?
In your second chapter, you describe this as a battle for freedom with a quote by Xi Jinping. And he quotes, "We will weaponize everything against the West." And in 1999, two Chinese colonels wrote a book called Unrestricted Warfare. The Chinese knew, as you mentioned, they could not beat us in a conventional warfare for decades. So they redefined war itself. Describe how they're prosecuting this war.
Well, it's called unrestricted war. There are other terms for it. That's the Chinese Communist Party name for it, is unrestricted war. It means war with no rules. In World War II, we had the Geneva Convention where it says you don't go after civilians and so on. Well, these guys are like, they don't care. And you need to understand who your enemy really is. And if you're in a war, you need to become intimate with your enemy, which that's why I wrote the book. You have to understand how they think. They've murdered twice as many than all other communist regimes combined. And that means murdering their own Chinese people. They relish human suffering. This is really who your diabolical enemy is. And they created COVID. What about COVID-2, which is meant to erase and kill ethnic people, ethnic races, and COVID-3. But then there's also very diabolical things that are being developed in that same Wuhan lab. And incidentally, that Wuhan city is also the fentanyl, the illicit fentanyl capital of the world, killing 150,000 American men, young military-aged young men and women every single year. Now that's the same as two 737s going down every single day. 350 U.S. families going to funerals. And the last time we lost this number of people every single year like clockwork, and it's in a very efficient method, it's called unrestricted, one piece of unrestricted warfare. The last time we lost 150,000 was World War II. And World War II was on every page, in every newspaper, in every paragraph, and in every newsreel. Why are you not seeing fentanyl on every page, every newsreel, every media outlet? Because they're killing two 737s worth of our young adults and the future of our country every single day. So if your mainstream media, and that's mainstream media, is not covering it, you need to change your media source and get with somebody who is actually covering the real news. Mainstream media is presenting propaganda to you, which is an alternate life path, an alternate world that is non-existent. It's not truthful. And so it's all meant to facilitate this takeover of America. And listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I can't stand conspiracy theorists. I can't stand sci-fi. I work off of facts. I work off of intelligence. And that's what the book is based upon. I come out of the business sector. I don't come out of military. I don't come out of government. So I'm not part of the problem, but I am helping to be part of the solution. Back to you, sir.
There are things about the CCP that they obviously want hidden or suppressed about their brutal suppression of the regime, from total surveillance in the social credit system, violent suppression, think of Tiananmen Square, forced labor camps, to live human harvesting, the fueling of Russia's war, bankrolling the regime in Iran, support of North Korea. The result, Casey, is the CCP is targeting our bodies with drugs, your mind with apps, games, and censorship, your faith, your family, and more importantly, your economic future. Let's talk about that. They're after everything.
They are. And the only way to fight it is really through the American people, because here's the answer. You get your freedom from God, and it's guaranteed by the Constitution. And the Constitution gives the power and the rights to the people, and the people tell the government what to do. Over the past 20 plus years, the government has taken the supreme position of telling the people what to do. That means your power and your rights have been taken from you, and they're continually being taken from you. So here's what your enemy doesn't want. That's the Chinese Communist Party. And those that are inside of our government, our military, our businesses. And yes, they are the enemy because they're against you and your rights and your freedom. And what they don't want are three things to happen. Number one, they don't want you to become informed. That's the book. They don't want you to be united. That's the movement next to the book. And if you're united and you're informed, they don't want you to take action. And that's also the movement next to the book. The movement is in development at the time of the book release, which was recently. And the movement is called freedomforever.global. And that freedom is directed only by God and the Constitution. That's who that movement answers to. And I actually lead that movement as well. So I don't need the job. I certainly don't want the job. But when you're called upon to act and you're called upon to serve your country, that's really what's happening. So I've been advising Congress, military, all the government agencies and so on. My company has for coming up on 2 decades. So we have a very clear view of what the heck is happening. So that's what's going on. One last thing. The Chinese Communist Party is the grand puppeteer over Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea, Venezuela, the drug cartels. And underneath Iran, the CCP has them managing and leading the terrorist organizations. So this complete diabolical axis is against freedom. And they want to completely unseat the United States as a world power and the world order and replace it completely with communism. Now, the World Economic Forum and Davos also figures into that. There are only 2 operating systems in the world. Number one, you've got freedom, and that operating system is capitalism. Yes, it is not perfect. Trust me. And we can work on that, and we continue to help with that as well. So capitalism is not perfect, but the only other option is the only other side to the coin, which is communism. And the operating system is communism, oppression, murder, control, surveillance. Everything you see, every movie you watch is to worship the state. And it's not going to be freedom of speech where you get to see movies today. Anything on social media is to worship the state. One thing also, your audience needs to understand, communism, most people don't understand this. Communism is a religion on its face. It is atheist. It is anti-Christ, and it's anti-God. You must worship the head of the state as God. No other religions are allowed to be at that level. In fact, now over the past 5 years, Xi Jinping has been deleting, murdering, shutting down all religions in China. And several have gone underground and they're murdering those leaders as well. And they've banned the Christian cross, the Star of David, and any other religious symbols that compete with the head of the state, which currently is Xi Jinping. So let me boil that down a little bit further. It's a spiritual war that you're in. This is how spiritual war is manifested in your daily lives. If a country and communism is anti-Christ, what is another word for anti-Christ? I think you kind of get the drift. So if you've chosen God and your faith being in God with the big G, you've already made your decision. And this message is to our youth. You can't be for Marxism, you can't be for socialism, and you can't be for communism because you've already chosen to be with God, with the big G, and not God with the little g, which is communism. So the other point on Marxism and socialism, that's where it's called suicide because you vote those people in because they're promising this utopia that never, ever, ever exists. And then when it gets too far along, then communism comes in and that's murder. In other words, you do what we tell you to do, or we kill you and your family, or we kill your family. That is the hard anvil of communism. And that's the only choice. They want you to believe that there's this utopia. Never in history, in all of history, has Marxism, socialism, or communism been successful. In fact, Chinese communism was running out of gas 25 years ago. So they joined the WTO and they took pieces of capitalism, but their management, their leadership is still hardcore communism. And by the way, just for records, the Chinese communists scare the hell out of the Russian communists because of the level of dark and diabolical belief that they have. Back to you, Jim.
China is also looking at using biological warfare against the West. Take us through how they released COVID and how they managed it, not only here, but globally with the WHO and other organizations. And then secondarily, what they're planning next.
Well, they've completely corrupted, the world order when they released the virus. And we have evidence, and we've always known, our intelligence community and we as our company have always known it was a biological weapon that was created in China. And it was based on stolen viruses, stolen coronaviruses from US university labs, US military labs, yes, and Canadian labs as well. And then they brought Canadians over to help build this weapon and under the guise of protecting citizens. And by the way, there's a documentary out on that called Unrestricted War that came out last summer in July. So take a look at that one as well. So their plan is to erase all other races, to ethnically cleanse all other races off the face of the earth. And if you're Han Chinese, you're golden. That is the only race that is allowed to survive, and all other races will be put into slavery supporting the Han Chinese. So that's the future that your children have to look to and your grandchildren have to look to. So this is your war. Like it or not, you're on the front lines of this war. And like it or not, you must get informed and you must take action. Your government has got you to this point, and nobody's going to save you or your family until you take action and soldier up with the knowledge and take action with your daily habits and what you read and see and so on. It's very serious. I can't stress enough. Don't be distracted by the war of the month in Iran. It is absolutely critical. It's serious. It's going to change history. But the bigger picture is unrestricted war on you and your family.
In your chapter on the battle for your body, you highlight the CCP's effort to destabilize the US. through the entry of drugs in the U.S. They are very much involved in the fentanyl trade through subsidies, the rewards for traffickers as well as their own. They've made loans to political families like the Bidens. They've financed Mitch McConnell's campaign, whose wife's father owns a massive shipping business in China, and I think makes a lot of Chinese military ships. So let's talk about that, how they're using drugs into this, the biggest entity behind the fentanyl trade that is killing so many Americans.
Well, remember, unrestricted warfare is no rules. Weakening your enemy from within by all means and any means necessary with no rules. Remember, the diabolical people that the Chinese Communist Party is and are, they have no trouble murdering their own people, and they relish in suffering. Remember, they have many millions of Uyghur Muslims that are Chinese heritage Muslims that they put in labor camps, slave camps, and so on, and they murder many of them. They murder many of the Tibetans that they took over many years ago. They murder many of the Falun Gong, and they harvest their organs. But back to your point on the fentanyl today is 6 times more powerful than it was 3 years ago. That means all the Narcan on an ambulance can't revive you. So what they have to do is they have to cut a hole in your throat and intubate you, either through your mouth or your throat. Usually it's through the throat for immediate and direct access, because at this point, Narcan's not helping. So this is a very serious problem. But how willing are you going to be to fight if you've lost 2 sons or a son and a daughter to fentanyl? And it's not accidental poisoning like the DEA likes to call it. It's murder. And it's not, soldiers in war, because war, you're going to war and that's what soldiers do. That's not murder. That's just casualties of war. But when you're going after innocent 18, 19, 20, 24-year-old young adults and killing them, you're killing the spirit of each family. And a lot of times sometimes it's 2 siblings in a family, or 1 sibling and a cousin in an extended family, and so on. And it just kills your family's will to fight and will to carry on. So this truly is an absolute #1 issue. If you want to get your blood up around this and you want to marshal yourself around it, I'll give you that number again. 150,000 every single year, like clockwork. It's double the number that the government is reporting to you. That's the number we in the intelligence community know what it is. And when was the last time you ever heard of fentanyl coming out from the White House, coming out from the government, or coming out from your mainstream media? That absolutely tells you everything you need to know. Now, that was, by the way, on back to the biological warfare thing and COVID. They knew exactly what they were doing. Remember, they hoarded all the PPE equipment. And when it came out, they denied that it came out, and they still allowed flights. Rand Corporation shows an actual heat map of flights coming out of Wuhan, Beijing, and other main cities in Shanghai and other cities in China to major cities throughout the world. And so that heat map does exist from Rand Corporation if you want to look it up. And so, and our government was played by complicit operatives in our government, and shutting down everything. So that was a test. That was a test by the Chinese Communist Party to see if they could shut down, through chaos, they could shut down the world economy, control everyone. It was also a test for other people to see, other organizations like the WEF and WHO and the UN, to show that they completely can take over the world. And that's really what's going on right now. And if people don't wake up and smell the coffee and take action, this is really what's going to happen. Wait for the next piece of chaos to happen, and the next piece of chaos to happen. When that chaos occurs, and it is planned and it will happen, whether it's going to be another COVID attack or another biological attack or whether it's a grid attack, closing and shutting down electricity, water, natural gas, and the internet. Think about how long you're going to survive with those things being down. After a week, people are going to be at each other's throats more than they are today, which, by the way, is also planned. Left against right, divide and conquer, left against right, blacks against whites, Zoomers against boomers, all these things. Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, all these things, defund the police. They are all to weaken our society for having all of us at each other's throats, to have civil unrest, for complete takeover. You're being played. You are being played. We as Americans must come together. I've presented to groups on the left as well as the right, and after several presentations, I've seen the left come up off of hard left and come up towards center. I've seen hard right come up towards center. At the basic fundamental building blocks, we're all Americans. We all appreciate and worship freedom, and most worship God. We have much more in common together than we do with our enemy.
China does not stop with your body. They're also after your mind through psyops, the ultimate invasion of your privacy and mind. They have three goals. One is micro targeting, where they use algorithms to build a psychological profile of you. The other thing they're doing is they call it advanced brain science, focus on how to hack perception and destroy decision making. Number two, dual use technology, turning civilian tools like social media into 24/7 weapons of war. And then finally, new algorithmic business models where they design to sell ads that are hijacked to sell communist ideology. Speak to that.
Well, you already nailed it by saying that, but I'll go into a little bit more detail. Everything on social media is weaponized against the person looking at it. So, most Gen Z gets 9 hours a day on social media and mostly TikTok. They get their news from a Chinese military app called TikTok. And I don't care if Larry Ellison bought it. I'm a software executive. And when you just change ownership, you don't change the software. In fact, the software is still 20% owned by ByteDance, which is 100% CCP, and they still own the algorithm. So nothing has changed. In fact, on TikTok, and by the way, the other social media apps are not much better, meaning Instagram, Snapchat, and so on. Even on TikTok, you've got things that they're teaching your kids to hate their family, hate their country. The Chinese system is so much better. Everybody's so much happier, so much better off. They're being programmed. It's killing their critical thinking, so they are not able to distinguish what the truth is. They can't search for the truth because their critical thinking is permanently shot. Once you control the brain, and the mind, you control that person forever. And they're being programmed. Ask any kid on TikTok. Say, hey, are you hearing about being more Chinese on TikTok? Are they telling you to get your morning and afternoon Chinese tea? And have you seen guys on TikTok telling you to, wait for the signal, keep organizing in your groups and rebelling against the American system that's so bad and evil and dark, and wait for the signal and go and when you get the signal, join in and go after, number one, go after the homes that have American flags in front, because they'll have the ammunition and the guns and the food that you need to survive and to continue in the fight, because America is coming undone. And you need to listen to our advice and continue to stay in your groups and wait for the signal. I mean, this stuff is going out to our kids, to our young adults, and they're being programmed like robots. Their critical thinking is shot. My advice to anyone, get your kids and grandkids. TikTok is a weaponized military app. What in the heck are you doing letting your kids watch it? Stop being self-focused on yourself as an adult and focus everything you have on our valuable, valuable children, which, by the way, is your future and their future. Social media is 90% weaponized by your enemy against you and your children and your freedom. Uh, Mainstream media is pretty much the same. So find your media sources, get your kids off of social media, and only use telephones or smartphones for communication devices. Hey, mom, pick me up from cheer practice, or mom, I'm going to need you to drop me off at sports, or whatever. Use it as a communication device. Do not use it for content, and do not use it for news. Back
I
to you,
want to
sir.
talk about their goals with PSYOP. Number one, make us dumb. Number two, make us hopeless or helpless. Three, make us hate ourselves. Four, confuse us. And five, promote communism and destroy freedom. You have a quote from Admiral James Stavridis, I believe. This is a war fought with algorithms and narratives where the casualties are trust, critical thinking, and social cohesion. By making truth itself feel unreliable, the CCP seeks to create populations that are more easily controlled, less capable of unified resistance, and increasingly vulnerable to external manipulation, which is them.
100%. Absolutely the plan. That is unrestricted warfare on its face. And that's the problem. Unrestricted warfare is in every living room. It's on every phone, in every app. It's in every kid's bedroom. It's in every kid's school. The level of infiltration and subversion would blow your mind if you really understood what's happening. Back almost 20 years ago, I remember when I first got into this. The first 30 days was, there's no way this is happening. And I'm sure your audience feels that right now. And they're looking at me and thinking that I should be putting on my tinfoil hat. The next 30 days was like, they could be doing this. And the next 30 days is, holy cow, they're doing it. Today, with so much out in the news, for the audience, it's more like 10 days, 10 days, and 10 days. I would say, if there's any question, go to the House Select Committee. They created this about 3 years ago, the Select Committee on the CCP, and go to their press releases and read through the press releases. Then go to my LinkedIn page, my name, Casey Fleming, or my company, Black Ops Partners, and read through the first 5 or 6 pages of posts. And you will see that I am not speaking gibberish here, and I'm certainly not doing it for myself. I'm actually one of the few that are still left into selfless service and doing it for God, literally God and country. So I know this is hard to take for the audience, but it's 100% truthful. And the longer we wait to get informed and take action, the more difficult it's going to be to protect our children and their freedom and their future.
One of the things I found probably the most shocking to me was reading about where they moved in education and universities. Chinese students represent 38% of our international students, and they take a pledge when they come over here to be basically spies for the CCP. And talk about this Confucius classroom where they whitewash Chinese horrors, but when schools sign contracts with the Chinese government, China controls teacher hiring, curricula, cultural programming, effectively importing CCP dictated staff and lessons plans. They also bought Primavera Capital Group, buying Tutor.com and Princeton Review. I was absolutely floored and shocked reading that chapter.
That's just a drop in the bucket for all the stuff that they've purchased, all the companies and so on. Princeton Review, that's SATs, ACTs, MCATs, LSATs. So they own the test. And guess what? When they own the test, they grade the test. So guess what? The Chinese kids are going to make very high grades, and American kids, not too good at grades. So that's really why would we ever sell that to, quote, the enemy? Remember, the Chinese Communist Party came to power in 1949. Their only enemy in 1949 was the United States. Even though we saved their country in World War II, Communism and freedom cannot coexist, not in the long term. They're oil and water, if you remember high school history class. And freedom on its own basically renders communism and control and oppression obsolete. So, they basically, and let me get you inside the Chinese mind, the Chinese communist mind. They believe that the Chinese ran the world for the last 2,300 years, say. They even go back as far as 5,000 years. The last century, starting with the Opium Wars in 1850, was the century of great humiliation. And it ended in World War II with the Americans kicking the Japanese out of China. And they believe that the next 23 years is their rightful destiny to rule the world. And that's the Chinese communists. And they will stop at nothing to eradicate any type of freedom on the planet. So they would like and they would prefer to have our children just fall in line to be communists. And remember what communism is. There is no freedom. You will not have freedom on social media. You will not have freedom with your friends. If you speak against the state and you don't like what the state's doing to you, rationing your food, they control all. There's no ownership. The state owns all property. You don't own cars, houses, or boats, or jet skis, okay, or bicycles. The state owns them. They own all production and all consumption. In fact, earlier this year and late last year, the Chinese economy was doing so poorly, they said you must spend your savings and your paycheck within 60 days to build up the economy, or it will be zeroed out for you. And that's done through the digital yuan. It's done through all the surveillance and the oppression and so on. If you speak bad about the state, your social credit score will go down 30 points. And the person that reported you, your child, your cousin, your next door neighbor, your business associate that reported you, their social credit score goes up 30 points. And so your children are incented to turn you in on your free speech that you're using in your house. So be very careful what you ask for with socialism, Marxism, and communism. That's the life that you're leading and what you're going after. And remember, all the spoils go to the elite at the top of that Chinese communist pyramid. They don't go down to the rank and file. In fact, today, over 60% of the Chinese people still live below the poverty line. And like I said, and think about Cuba used to be the jewel of the Caribbean. Same thing. Russia used to be very healthy, and it's decimated today because of communism, and they still haven't really built the country back. So you've got all these instances of communism that have never worked, and they've oppressed people. And let me go back to one last thing. Your enemy, in fact, a colleague has written a book on live human organ transplants. It's called Murder. And what they do is they've murdered our numbers about 3 million. In the book, the colleague says he can justify about 1 million, but we've got dissidents, we've got operatives inside of China. We know what the heck we're talking about. And the number's more like 3 million over the past 10 years. These are murders in 93 military hospitals that are harvesting organs. So you, Jim, if you need a new heart, all you have to do is place an order. And in 2 weeks, you'll fly to Beijing, go into a military hospital, and they'll have a Falun Gong person waiting there downstairs to be strapped in. And a lot of times they don't even use anesthesia on harvesting the organs. And they start with the eyes first, and they end with the heart. And they just harvest all those organs within, like an hour's time and distribute that to those other people waiting on the floor for that. The name of that book is called Organs to Order. Jan Jekielek does a great job of basically exploding and deep diving on one of the dots. Remember, I connect all the dots across the top so you can see the fabric and the framework of what's going on. And some other great guys have actually exploded those dots in deep dive. Jan Jekielek on live human organ transplants. Other folks on open borders and creating the coup, the internal coup to take over America with illegal aliens coming in and having completely different agendas than freedom to completely take us over. So, open borders is a communist move. It is not a freedom move, and then having DEA trying to deport those people. This is not a political statement. DEA just doing their jobs as far as law and order, which is what we hired them to do, and to administrate the Constitution. Anybody protesting against that is supporting communism. And by the way, people that don't understand the end result, Lenin called those people useful idiots. That goes for black people and white people marching for BLM. Those people marching for BLM, not understanding that it's a communist move and a communist movement, they're useful idiots. Black people, on its face, are being hijacked. And it's certainly not for the black people. It's to hijack the movement and hijack the whole black piece to where we're sensitive to black people and equality, and the people marching for that are being used. There's nobody who wants black equality more than me, but you have to report the truth and say that black people are being hijacked. In fact, I have some very, very strong, eloquent, awesome black people that I quote in the book that call all of that out. Even MLK was a communist. And that's all proven in the book by black leaders that are completely on top of that whole game, which is communism through the black church. In fact, communism in the black church was the first successful implementation of communism in the United States. They went through the black church with Martin Luther King. Most black churches today, and this is according to the black leaders that I work with, you don't hear scripture and the Bible in a lot of black churches. All you hear is politics. So that is, and those churches are communist encampments, those black churches. And that's happening in some white churches today as well. But again, I'll make the statement, this isn't a racial thing. This is an American thing. It's a freedom thing. It's a God and country thing. Black people are being hijacked with Black Lives Matter, and so on. And we want all black people to be equal and to have an equal share and an equal chance at freedom and to guarantee their freedom. So that's the statement on the whole BLM thing. BLM people were played. Black people were played. And we were too ignorant to know what was happening as a people. Back to you, sir.
I want to move on to the economic war, which a lot of our listeners will be familiar with, supply chain disruptions, the basically parceling out rare earth elements and controlling minerals. And this is a plan. Xi Jinping's plan is simple. Make the world dependent on China, then use that dependence as a weapon, rare earths, chips, batteries, medicine. If we don't act now, the CCP will decide what and when American can build. And what you quote here from the book, the West got weaker because it prints money. Its real productivity has decreased. It's been deindustrialized voluntarily, and it doesn't make the things it needs. It's super codependent with China, which has inhibited our responses. Wow.
That's exactly right. That's absolutely exactly right. We've painted ourselves into this corner. Your government and its policies have painted you and your family into this corner. You've been losing your freedom every week, every day, every week, every year. And so that's why I wrote the book. People have to come together with information. Information is power, and uniting and then taking action. There needs to be an American revival based on the truth. And that's really what this book points out. What you just described is exactly, you read it from the book, so it's 100% true. And at this point, I'll even tell you that there are over 20 global intelligence who's who experts who have endorsed the book, global intelligence experts and subject matter experts. And even since the book came out, there have been 2 more military intelligence guys that have endorsed the book since the book came out a short time ago. So this book is the truth. And it is the reckoning call to every American. Your government got you into this situation. You're the only person that can get you out of it, to get you and your family out. So it's time that you step up, be a leader in your family, be a spiritual leader in your family for God, and your country, and take action. As opposed to being a consumer, it's now time to take action.
You know, I want to talk about Made in China 2025. I don't think people realize if I'm a corporation and I'm spending billions and billions of dollars of research to come up with the technology and a product that I make, I go to China because it's cheaper to manufacture that product in China. I have to turn over all that research and technology to China. So imagine the economic advantage that gives China. They don't have to spend the RD. They can take what we already did and go from there and develop from there. You know, Casey, I went to uh, the Consumer Electronics Show in January of this year. Over 30% of the companies that were displaying there were Chinese companies with innovation. And they have become the world's industrial power, very much like the US was after World War II. They want to dominate military, artificial intelligence, robotics, aerospace, biotech, power equipment, rail, new energy vehicles. There were a bunch of hedge funds that went to China at the beginning of the year, and they went through all of China and they came back with about 15 industries they said we can't invest in because China just dominates such a huge advantage over the US. Let's talk about what they're doing. They're basically decimating our economy from revenues to the things that we try to make here.
Absolutely. They're gutting our economy. They're gutting our way of life. They're gutting it. And so solar panels, 100% US. Energy windmills, 100% US. You can't get them now unless you order them from China. That's completely stolen IP. The solar electric panels wasn't really stolen. We gave it to them because you're right. When we do business in China, any company doing business in China, you must sign over due to CCP laws and CCP national security laws of 2015, 16, 17, and 18, that they must have all of your data and all of your intellectual property. And if you're a consulting company, they must also have the data and intellectual property from all of your clients. And you don't have any idea where your IP is going. So what's happening is, for example, let's just take a Boeing 737. China basically stole the airplane. It's called a Comac 919. Okay. And that airplane is more American than apple pie and baseball. And they are about $100 million a piece. So you're taking $100 million out of the US economy in revenue, profit, jobs, hospitals, schools, and national security, and sucking that out of the American economy. And your enemy, not, I don't want to say your trading partner, your wonderful friend and cute little country called China, your bloody enemy is taking that technology and that revenue to power their diabolical plans to destroy the United States and take over the world. So, companies like Hewlett Packard, IBM, are turning over the keys to the castle with their software. So China knows everything about you. And by the way, that software that powers 1,500 other companies, now they have the source code to see and to be able to hack those companies. And you mentioned Chinese students. In the peak in 2018, there were 405,000 Chinese student spies in US universities. When they leave China, they must check out with their local police station. There are no police stations in China. They're government stations. And they must sign a loyalty pledge to the Chinese Communist Party and, once again, national security, and report back to their handlers, what they can get into, what teams they can get into, what intellectual property they can get at these universities. And incidentally, they're being trained in the same internet security classes that our kids are. And so today, Trump has, a couple of months ago said, hey, look, We're going to open that up back up to 600,000 Chinese students at US universities. And the universities are giddy like cocaine addicts because these university presidents say, oh, I've got these Chinese students coming in here and they're paying full pop on tuition. And I have to discount tuition to American children. So I'll take all the Chinese students that I can. Yeah, and they're taking IP. Who cares? Who cares? And they're selling you and your family and your children's freedom to the devil and literally to Satan. And we covered that earlier in this interview. So that's really what's at stake. It couldn't be more fouled up. And that's another reason why each American must take action. Back to you, sir.
Yeah, one of the things I skipped this earlier, but I want to bring it up now. I was surprised to find out that almost 80% of the movies made in Hollywood have to go through a Chinese censorship if they want to play that movie in China, which has 1.4 billion people. So China even has a say-so in how movies are made and the content of those movies, often changing the script to some extent.
They are. The Hollywood executive that brought the CCP into Hollywood, his name is Chris Fenton. There's a documentary that came out on it. It's called Hollywood Takeover. And it basically features Chris Fenton. And at the end, I'm on the stage with Chris Fenton, along with about a half a dozen other panelists. And he says, you know, they punched us in the nose. They punched us in the nose, but I'd like to get them back into the United States. He still fundamentally does not want to understand the enemy. And he's responsible, in my opinion, for selling out his country. And so it's not just American movies in China, it's US movies that are being influenced. They say, if you want to sell any movies in China, you will correct this movie. Top Gun was one of them. Tom Cruise had a Taiwanese flag on the back of his jacket. And when you see the final, that's on the trailer. When the movie came out, there was no Taiwanese flag on the back of his jacket. That's just one example. I would urge people to go look at that documentary called Hollywood Takeover. Again, it came out about 2 years ago. Yeah, I have a lot of detail. That's why I came out and wrote the book. Back to you, sir.
I want to talk about their master plan. And in your book, you talk about 4 stages of ideological subversion. Stage 1, demoralization, lasting 15 to 20 years through education, media, religion, social institutions, infiltrate schools to promote relativism, discredit patriotism, and sow division. And stage 2, destabilization, which I believe this is where we are now, accelerate chaos by targeting the economy, radicalize labor, incite ethnic tensions, BLM, pro-Islamism, and undermine law enforcement. And, I think if our listeners listening to this take a look at what we've seen in the media over the last, I would say, almost 3 decades since the beginning of this new century, the divisions between the political parties, Democrat, the protests we're seeing, whether it's Antifa, George Floyd protests. Like I said, I was shocked over the No Kings seeing communist flags flown in our city. We've got a communist mayor in New York, a communist mayor in Seattle. And this is where I think you believe we're at now. Stage 3 is the crisis, which could take months. And then stage 4 is normalization, where basically they've taken over.
Exactly. You actually have a communist governor in California, and it spells it out. All of it is spelled out, and that's exactly what's happening. It's communism inside on U.S. soil. There are 40 CCP police stations throughout the United States. That, number one, it's for espionage. 2, it's for oppression of anybody who's anti-CCP. And one of those is the Falun Gong and Shen Yun, because their show is China before communism. So it basically flies in the face of the CCP. So the CCP calls in bomb threats. They've done it in New York. They've done it in New York. They've done it in LA, and they recently did it in Toronto. They slash their bus tires. They give them death threats. And so if you can go out and see Shen Yun, support those people because they are anti-CCP. And So all this is really what you're seeing. Uh, Southern border, we know for a fact that over 200,000 CCP, Chinese Communist operatives, special forces came across the southern border, 200,000, and they're in safe houses in the United States. Over 10,000 Chinese 18-wheeler truck drivers were giving, so marry that to all the land that the Chinese have purchased outside of military bases and farmland, by the way, AKA drone launch sites. And they have warehouses that they can just roll out launch mechanisms. They've got containers off of container ships. Remember, 80% of the container ships and containers are driven by the CCP. So we are compromised like you wouldn't believe. So it is at that point, and I appreciate you taking this time and pointing out these things from the book, and getting this information out to every American, but also our brothers and sisters in Canada are worse off than we are as far as being compromised. Our brothers and sisters in the UK and the EU, because they don't know that this is the end. And this is the last gasp for air. You better save yourself and swim to the shore, or you're going to drown in communism. And that's really what this is. Giving you a last gasp for air, giving you maybe something to cling on to, like a piece of wood out in that ocean, if you want to use that analogy. But you're the one that has to save yourself. The lifeguard and the Coast Guard are not coming. It's you that has to make this happen.
Let's talk about what you can do. And I would say, first off, you better find a reputable source in the media, because the legacy media covers this up. You'll never hear the things you and I are talking about right now, or mentioned in your book, mentioned in a evening newscast by the legacy media. So could you give some ideas that our listeners could go to where they can get this kind of information?
Well, it's my opinion. But Epic Times and their TV station, their TV site is called NTD. Newsmax is good. Real America Voice. All of these are good. You can go to Gatestone Institute and get on their newsletter. They're very accurate as well. But you're not going to your point, you're not going to hear this anywhere else. Fox doesn't cover it to the level that it does. Even Newsmax covers it, but not to the level that they need to. And again, and you've got the distraction of the day, the chaos and distraction of the day is the Iran war. Don't be distracted by that. The bigger war is on you and your family, and it's unrestricted war by the Chinese Communist Party. What can you do? Get the book in the hands of, and by the way, it's not a book. It's a whistleblower's expose and survival guide. That's what it is. It's not a book, actually. It looks like a book. Get the book in the hands. I mean, I just got off the phone with somebody who bought 100 books, and I wanted to thank him for doing that, and for God and country. The book is not for me. The book is for you. I wrote it for you. Do you really think I'm putting everything on the line? My resume, my life, everything else on the line to be out here in front of you to do this? No. You have a warrior. I'm an absolute warrior, and I challenge you to also be a warrior. Number one, get the book in everybody's hands. Make sure you review it. You want to give it 10 stars, but all you can do is give it 5 stars. And do that. I've got another interview coming up. So get it out in front of people. Do not buy Chinese goods and services or invest with people doing business with China. And then lastly, stop foreign influence. And the rest of it's explained in the book. I really do appreciate the interview, Jim. God bless you. God bless our country, and God bless everybody watching. And get this video out viral to your friends and family, and repost it, please.
Thanks for taking the time.
You got it, sir. Thank you.
The name of the book is called The Red Tsunami, The Silent Storm Killing Your Freedom. It is must reading. I bought 10 copies of this and gave it to all my friends, and read it. You will be surprised, and it'll give you some clarity and understanding of what you see happening in this country on a day-to-day basis.